tomorrow night, number 3 FSU welcomes in number 7 Miami. What's the feeling going into this game?
Well, I think the feeling is that this rivalry is finally back, and that's the really great thing about it. I mean, growing up as a kid, I thought Florida State-Miami was always a must-watch game for all the, not just the play on the field and the NFL talent, but all the trash talking that was going on. And I think this year it's good to see both teams in the top 10. I think the spread's a little too high, and the key for Miami will be to avoid that early knockout punch. Florida State has outscored their last 3 ACC opponents 90-7 in the first half, so they can't fall behind like they have the last few weeks, but I anticipate that's going to be a heck of a game.
You see all the swag that Jameis Winston is bringing. He's having the press conferences weekly now that ESPN's airing. He made a comment that he said that Miami said that FSU is bringing the swag back, which we are. Do you think at any point in this season that catches up to Jameis Winston?
Well, we'll see. I mean, this is a statement game under the lights. I thought the Clemson game was just phenomenal, how they just went in there, and you saw how Clemson was rocking. That place was crazy out of the beginning, and they just knocked them out so early. We'll see. I mean, it did catch up with Johnny Manziel. Remember how quickly he became a Heisman candidate, and then some of that success went to his head. But I just don't see it with Florida State. And to be honest with you, if they get by this game, I could see them. They're really the one team that I think that could beat Alabama in a national championship game.
Do you think, looking at Jameis Winston right now, comparing him to Johnny Manziel, does he have the numbers to out-edge him for the Heisman this year?
Well, I don't. If I had a vote, I would vote for Mariota from Oregon over both right now because he has the numbers. He hasn't thrown an interception. He's on an undefeated team, and there are times when Oregon's offense, there's just nothing you can do about it. They literally run some plays when I'm watching them. I'm like, I don't know how a defensive coordinator can stop that play. So I think Mariota, Manziel, Winston are all 1, 2, 3, and I would give the edge to Mariota and Winston. Whichever one of those guys can get in the national championship game would be the guy that I would vote for probably.
Speaking of Oregon, they have the weekend off as well as Alabama. If FSU, let's just say, blows out Miami tomorrow, do they have a chance of leaping into the number 2, maybe even getting to that number 1 spot in the BCS?
Well, I don't know if they'll get to number 1 yet, but they could certainly go to number 2 with a win tomorrow. But I don't know how long that's going to live because the Super Thursday that's coming with Oregon and Stanford and then Baylor and Oklahoma in a couple days. But it's going to be a back and forth with Oregon and Florida State. And Ohio State's kind of the one, yeah, they're behind them, but guess what? They don't really play anybody until they play Michigan. So that's the team I'd watch out for because Oregon and Florida State, to me, are more likely to lose than Ohio State. And whether people like it or not, Urban Meyer and the Buckeyes, they could easily slip into the national championship game. And in some ways, I mean, come on, Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, that's a good title game no matter how you look at it.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree with you. I mean, being a Florida State fan, I have to hope that they get in there. But I agree with you. Urban Meyer and Nick Saban in the national championship game would be great. ACC football is looking good again this year. Florida State and Miami are both undefeated as of right now. Clemson only has 1 loss. Is the ACC on its way to being back to being a powerhouse of college football?
I think it's a little bit deeper, and that's the important thing. But the litmus test will be how they do in the Orange Bowl if they get that second BCS bowl team, how Florida State ends up doing. If, like I'm saying, I'm sitting here telling you right now, I think they measure up to Alabama, but I've said that about other teams in the past. I thought for a while that Notre Dame might be able to hang with Alabama last year, and that absolutely did not happen. So they have to prove it in the BCS setting. And like you said, I mean, it's good to see Florida State and Miami like they were in the 80s and 90s. They were awesome in the 80s and 90s, and I think they're getting back to that. And you can't. I know Virginia Tech lost last week, but they're always solid. And Clemson, it's nice to see what Dabo Swinney's done with that program. And a couple other programs, I think they got to make the conference deeper instead of a bunch of just middle of the road teams, if you know what I'm saying. So it's a good thing. And the ACC certainly, I think it's better than the Big Ten now. And that's so out of the power conferences, it's probably 3, and that's not so bad.
Who would you put ahead of them? Obviously, SEC at number 1. What would you put the Pac-12 at 2?
Yeah, you have to. The Pac-12 is pretty deep also. I mean, I think it's that middle. I mean, Oregon's really good. Stanford's BCS level team that had the one loss. UCLA, Washington, and a couple of those Arizonas are schools that, you know, they're not easy to play. So, yeah, like I said, that conference is a little bit deeper, but it's close. I mean, it's not like the ACC's leaps and bounds behind that, but it's certainly better than the Big Ten and the Big 12, at least this year.
You mentioned who can measure up with Alabama. Nick Saban obviously is fantastic coaching during the regular season. He's even better when he has a month and a half to plan for one game, a national championship game. What happens when the playoff system starts next year? What do you see like out of Alabama? Can they win 2 games? Can they win 3 to get to a championship game?
Well, I mean, they would have just as much chance as everybody else because you don't know how everybody else will react to having to play 2 or what are going to be huge games. I mean, if you look at the comparison would be the NCAA Final Four in basketball, and those guys, they have one day to prepare for the next team once you win and come off the high of winning that first game. So it's going to be exciting, I'm going to tell you what. But as for this year, Alabama, if they win a 3rd straight championship, in my book, it is the most significant college football accomplishment in my lifetime, certainly. And no team has ever won 3 straight AP national championships since the AP started in 1938. And I think Alabama, what they're going for is kind of going under the radar. I mean, that's really unbelievable. And I mean, the last team to repeat was USC, and we all know the trouble they got in after. So it's really an amazing accomplishment, and it will be interesting to see if Nick Saban and company can actually pull this off.
Alabama plays LSU next weekend. What do they have to do to beat Alabama?
Well, they just have to do what they've done in the past. I mean, people forget that Les Miles can beat Nick Saban. He has beat Nick Saban, and he's done it 2 of the last 3 times they've went to Alabama. So, Zach Mettenberger's obviously going to have to play smart with the football. They're going to have to play good defense. But it's not like LSU's devoid of playmakers. Their receivers are outstanding. They make big plays. So it's going to be a typical LSU-Alabama game, which in my book, and I was talking to somebody else earlier today, said that's the best game in college football. It will continue to be the best game in college football because it's got 2 rock-star coaches, always has a ton of NFL talent on both sides of the ball, and, you know, it's going to be 1 or 2 big plays that determine the finish. So I think LSU's got a great chance to win next week, but if Alabama can get through that game, they're not going to lose. They're not going to lose to Auburn. They're not going to lose in the SEC championship to whoever they throw at them. They're going to be 13-0. So it's going to be an outstanding game, and the fact both teams have that extra week to prepare makes it even better.
You mentioned Nick Saban in Alabama. If they win 3rd one this year, that's 3 in a row. It's 4 of the last 5 years. He won 1 at LSU. Obviously, he went to the Miami Dolphins, coached there. It didn't work out. But 3 coaching jobs are probably going to become available in the NFL this year. Does Nick Saban get that call, and would he ever consider going back to the NFL?
I don't think he needs to, but I mean, he could certainly entertain it. I mean, I always look at coaches' ages, and I know Nick Saban, his birthday was Halloween. I believe he's in his 60s now. So I don't know why he would go to the NFL. And if he does, it's going to be a huge team. It's going to be like Dallas or Pittsburgh or one of those teams. He's not going to come back and go to Jacksonville. You know what I mean? So I would just think that he's going to stay there, and if they win 3 in a row, he's the type of guy, I mean, he's going to go for another one. He's going to try to people will be talking about them going for 4 national championships in a row. That's John Wood and Bear Bryant type stuff. So I don't see him doing it. I mean, people can speculate about it all you want because, I mean, that's what people do, but more a coach like Urban Meyer maybe in the future because he's younger. If he wins 1 or 2 at Ohio State, I could see him maybe going to the NFL.
You have no head coaching experience as well as we do. We made the comment earlier we would never even entertain the idea of coaching Jacksonville. If you had the opportunity to head coach an NFL team, Bill, would you take the Jacksonville job?
I don't know. You know what I'm going to tell you? I made a bet, I won't disclose how much, with some of the guys in the office when Jacksonville, I watched some of their game in week 4, and I said, I'll take any guy that wants to take this. I don't think that team wins a football game this year, and I've stuck to it. I mean, they're 0-8. I wouldn't want that job. It's just not a good fit for an NFL franchise. Maybe I'm being too harsh, but I just wouldn't want to coach there. They don't have a lot of talent. They lose Justin Blackmon today. He's the only guy on offense that they've got that's worth anything right now. So I would say maybe I'd take an assistant coaching job somewhere else in the NFL.
If you gave me 20 minutes, I could probably convince you why if the Bucks and Jaguars played each other this year, nobody would win.
Well, yeah, that's the other team. They're sneaky. They're sneaky good bet for 0-16 too. And I'm honestly surprised they haven't fired Greg Schiano. I mean, you hear something worse about that franchise every week.
We just had Vinny Iyer on a little while ago, and he said that I asked him if Schiano's going to get fired this year. He said, yeah, right after the season. I'm under the impression it's going to be within the next week or two. Where do you stand?
I work with Vinny, obviously, and I do a podcast with him every week, and he's pretty in tune with that kind of stuff. So I think it depends on how bad they get beat. Like, if Seattle just skunks them Sunday, I could see it, and then maybe Tampa Bay can rally around an interim coach or whatever. You see that every year where an interim coach gets a team a win. But, I trust Vinny. He's had a pretty good read on the NFL coaching hires. I'd urge your listeners to read him at sportingnews.com. He's an excellent NFL reporter. But like I said, if Seattle beats them like 52-0 Sunday, you could be right. They could be firing him by Monday.
All right, we jump over to fantasy. I'm under the impression that you are a little bit of a guru. I don't know if you'd consider yourself that, but I hope you do. How many leagues are you in this year?
8. Is that enough? Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I do a little bit. 8's a lot, and I got a spreadsheet and everything. It looks like that thing you see like Mike McCarthy or one of those coaches that they hold in front of their mouth with all the plays. So I stay organized. That's the key to success, and have a lot of fun doing it.
What sites do you do fantasy on?
A little ESPN and Yahoo, and a couple of those random ones that you pay for your site or whatever. I've been doing it for 12 years. It's actually what I write most of. I kind of split between college and fantasy at Sporting News. So, I'd write football columns each week, help with our rankings, do our live chats on Sunday morning. So it's obviously something I enjoy doing, and it's been a good year so far. I haven't got messed up by a lot of the injuries. So I'm looking good, even though I did start Andy Dalton in a couple leagues last night. That was a little bit rough.
Oh, yeah, that was a little rough. What do you say to all the guys who took Adrian Peterson with the number 1 pick?
Well, I mean, he's still doing okay. What I'm looking with running backs, it's been a disappointing year all the way around. You've had a lot of running backs get injured, like Doug Martin, C.J. Spiller. They've disappointed people. I'm looking at rushing attempts per game, and Adrian Peterson's still up there. Marshawn Lynch still up there. Why does everybody love Eddie Lacy? The Packers are feeding him the ball. He has 19.7 attempts per game. So as long as your guy's getting enough attempts, he's going to be fine long term. And Peterson, he's in a messy situation. Look at the quarterback play. Look at the receiver play. He's still getting a little bit. He's fine.
You think Jonathan Stewart is worth a flex play this week?
Well, oh, man, that's a tough one. I might hold off a week. Atlanta, I think that's going to be an interesting game because I think Atlanta's going to – I'm not saying they're going to win, but I think they're going to put up a fight against Carolina because it's an underrated NFC South rivalry. So with D'Angelo, Mike Tolbert's still going to get those goal line touches. So I think you're looking at a split between D'Angelo and maybe Stewart getting a couple series. But I don't know that I would risk playing him in the flex this week, especially because it seems like the Panthers' best goal line running backs are 1, Mike Tolbert, 2, Cam Newton.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the whole Cam thing. You go back to, 2 years ago, he had more rushing yards than all the running backs on the team. What would you say about Roddy White, sticking obviously in the NFC South going into this weekend? Do you think he plays?
I doubt it. I mean, they're really going to probably play it safe with him, and if he's not 100%, he's not going to play. I think that's the way it's been so far. And if he plays, I mean, you've obviously come up with other options, other ways of doing it. I mean, the best play in Arizona, or Atlanta rather, this week is probably Harry Douglas because Carolina's got those excellent middle linebackers. I think they're going to slow down Tony Gonzalez, even though he's really, really good. I think Harry Douglas is the guy that might pop a couple of big plays on the perimeter. So if I'm playing an Atlanta receiver, it's probably him. And we'll see. I said Matt Ryan was a decent sleeper this week, and I say that because I think he's going to throw a lot, and he has pretty good numbers against Carolina.
We're talking with Bill Bender, an associate editor for Sporting News. Who is somebody that right now that's a must-drop that somebody might be on the ledge about?
A must-draft?
A must-drop. A must-drop.
Oh, must-drop. Yeah, well, I mean, there's a bunch of guys out there that would be on the fence. It's a guy I cut this week was, all the Giants backs, basically. I cut Brandon Jacobs. I cut David Wilson. I mean, I'm not real worried about them. Peyton Hillis, those guys were just – the Giants have been such a mess that I wasn't really worried about having them on my team. So, but then again, if Wilson were to get back, he would be the guy that I would want. And then I mentioned Doug Martin. Even if he comes back, we've talked so much about how Tampa Bay was a mess that I don't necessarily feel like he needs to be on your roster if you need a player or two that can, if you're in a pinch this week, because obviously there are 6 teams on bye.
Who's a must pick up right now that some people might be worried about?
Well, I mean, if he's out there, Terrence Williams, but I seriously doubt he's out there. To be honest with you, I'm picking up guys like Jarrett Boykin. And you know what? I'll go with the hometown guy. A guy I put in there this week because I just didn't have any receivers is I picked up Ted Ginn Jr. He's been making the most out of his targets. He catches a couple deep balls here and there, and it seems like for whatever reason, Newton has a good rapport with him on these deep passes. So Kenny Stills, Ted Ginn Jr., those are guys that if you're in a pinch this week looking for that third receiver, and you probably are with 6 teams on bye week, I like the guys that, all it takes is 1 or 2 big passes.
Percy Harvin's been out all season. He's coming back within the next couple weeks. Do you think he'll be a good receiver coming back for, make a playoff run?
Depends on when he gets back, because they're going to need him to be good for the playoffs, especially with Sidney Rice out. But I don't think they're going to just full go him right when they put him in. So once he comes back in, I think you're looking at 1 or 2 weeks where he might play, might not play. Pete Carroll's been real evasive about it so far, so that worries me too. So, I mean, he's a guy you can stash if you have room, and maybe he helps you out. But I think you're going to have to wait till the fantasy playoffs. And I'm one of those guys that they start in week 14, so my whole approach is get to the fantasy playoffs, and then you start worrying about it. Because another guy I saw on the waiver wire that I'm trying to stash, I did stash, was Randall Cobb. And I might only have him for week 15 and week 16, but you know what? Aaron Rodgers has proven he can throw to anybody, and if Cobb's back and healthy, he's going to throw him the football.
Good stuff, Bill Bender, associate editor for Sporting News. Before we let you go, we always ask somebody for last call. It's basically a shout-out. It doesn't have to be sports-related, but it can be. What would be your last call?
My last call this weekend is just to enjoy college football this weekend. The next 8 days are 4 games that are going to decide the national championship picture. Alabama, Florida State, Miami, Oregon, Baylor, they're all on the spot, and I can't wait to see the 2 teams out of that group that survive this week. Maybe more, but I can't wait. That's going to be great.
What 2 teams do you see surviving?
Out of that week, I like Alabama to get through it. I like Florida State. I think Oregon gets through, but I think Baylor's going to go down against Oklahoma. That's the one I think the Boomer Sooners going to get them. They're going to go into Baylor, and things are going to start getting interesting from there.